a lot of people.
No, that's good.
Okay. Not yet, at least, right? Hey, so I'm here with Laurel. We're talking about, I'm going to start my program over again with screenings and evaluations today. And if y'all ever get a chance to get on with me, at the end, I'll leave it for coaching. So it's any particular instance that's happening in your classroom or your tutoring that I can address, I'll help with. But I was just telling Laurel, let's see. The whole point of my Albert is to know the why, and that's the part 1 of Nurture Their Nature. And you'll see an underlying theme of let's work on adaptability. Let's work on a flexible mind for everybody. So a closed mind, can leave you shut down. A closed mind will be you attached to your ego. And if you're attached to your ego, you can never really be open to teach somebody, because your way is going to be the right way, right? But through our Christianity, Laura and I know that connection is key. That's connection to our soul. That's connection to our spirit. That's connection to God. So I was saying to her was, if I were to say one thing about my program and this flexible, flexible mind leading to adaptability, is we want to create peace within ourselves, peace within others, and peace with God. You get peace with God first, by the way. But anyway, that's what's going to create a teacher that's going to meet the whole child's needs, because they're not looking at their own needs and their insufficiencies of not understanding the child. They're going to be always open to learning, let's say through my coaching with my Albert, or through observing the child to learn. Okay, so they're putting their ego aside, that they're open to learning from the child, and that's trusting the child completely. And you're listening and observing them and seeing how their mind works, and you're open to their mind working, that makes you flexible. So with every type of teaching, you need to have a screening or evaluation done first, so you can meet them where their needs are right away. It cuts down some of the observing right at first. That would take longer. So let's look at my Albert screenings. This is on Trello. This is what every person that uses my Albert gets. Let me show you what I do. I just send it to your email. So if you're listening to this and you're being coached by my Albert, you're most likely within the first 3.5 years of it. So I'm just asking for case studies and feedback, and possible referrals or reference letters saying how it helped. But anyway, so on it has 3 sections. Oh, what I say, 3 sections. In my mind, it's 3. Screenings and evaluations, intervention classes, starting with phonics, of course, text comprehension, phonological awareness, enrichment, support documents, and for you to fill out the case study here. So Linda's doing it, and she is putting her documentation that's going to lead to her case into her Trello board. So when you have access, you can upload stuff to it too. So let's look at it, screenings and evaluations. This is the actual checklist. Let's mark on it first. Press on it first. So when you press on it, it's going to remind you for each student that you do it on, you give them their own rebrand link. You rebrand that link, so that's that specific child's screening that then becomes workable document. Not because it comes from Google Forms, it's not going to be one. Once you send it off on the original, that's it. There's no working on it anymore, because I'm then seeing the original, what you're marking. But if you have your own rebrandly, it's a workable document for that child, so you can go back and change anything you want for a while. So that's what that is up first there. So let's press on it. Here it is. Okay, so this is what it looks like for you. You're going to fill out your email, blah, blah, blah. I give a little description of it's a lot of Howard Gardner's Bloom's taxonomy stuff. No. Yeah. multiple intelligence. Why did I say that? I was thinking Bloom's. Anyway, y'all know I have dyslexia, and I'm telling why I do this stuff. So this is what it looks like for you. On my end, it's gonna look like this. So hold on. I gotta pull it up on my end. So that way I can easily go through it with you. Put in their information, your name, their grade level, their age, so on and so forth. Let me check to see if Nina got a hold. No, Nina yet. Okay. You put your information, because this is me knowing more about you, the observer. So you can start asking the child these questions, and or you could leave it to just sending this form to the parent and they can do it on their own, because they might know their child well enough to answer the child's gifts and strengths and interests. If not, you do it with them, okay? And the child there too. So example, are you good with verbal directions? Do you understand things the first time they're said? That's verbal linguistic. Most of our students are going to be a no on this, by the way. Verbal linguistic, that's the top deficit here, okay, that we're talking about for most learning differences, not neurodivergency. It has nothing to do with neurodivergency on how well you can speak your language, but it does affect if you have a language deficit. So, so do you enjoy computer, tablets, anything technology, visual, spatial? Trust me, you're going to have a lot of yeses on that with your students. Do you have a good memory for names, places, trivia, verbal linguistic? Again, that's going to probably be no. Then there's a visual, spatial, so on and so forth. Now, there is something I have to explain here. Do you remember melodies of songs? That's musical linguistic. That's equal part of the brain. So that could be left or right, but this one will tell us if it's gifted and talented. So, I don't know what this number is. I might have to check, get my phone. Looks like the school, my daughter's school number, but, musical linguistics would be left and right, okay? So let me tell you this, it does show most if my students are gifted and talented, okay? So let me tell you this, with musical being left, ML, that's more of the words, okay? So that is not going to be most of our students. Musical left is not going to be most of our students. MR, musical right, is going to be most of our students, because our evaluative skills are with rhyme, meter, chant, and rhythm. Okay, so that's where you'll see MR being most of our students, not this ML. Okay, then we got our visual spatial. Now we got intra and intrapersonal, which is so interesting to me. I think we're gonna have to talk of that one on an individual basis, because you can have strong intrapersonal skills and you can have strong interpersonal skills at the same time. So you say it's like both brains. And then you can have interpersonal skills, but be marked as interpersonal skills, because what people have done to you, what people, animals, and nature has actually affected you from your environment, but not naturally, but naturally be have strong interpersonal skills. So this one would you be coached on. All the intras and inters you're going to be coached on, because that's a complicated one. And then I saw body kinesthetic right. It's just like the musical left and musical right. That one's different, because body kinesthetic right is large motor skills, having strong large motor skills. Body kinesthetic left is having good fine motor skills. Most of our students will be body kinesthetic right. They'll be better with large gross motor skills. They will, let me say it again, they will be, unless they have dyspraxia, which is a coordination problem, which is hippocampus, which is both time and space awareness, then they won't have strong body kinesthetic right, which is very few of our students have that. And they will be marked low on body kinesthetic left, most of them. So that's the fine motor skills. So don't worry, I'm coaching on all of this. You do the screening, then I coach you. This is why it's a specialized online coaching curriculum. That's key. Because we know that our kids can be complex and have a lot of eccentricities. I can never say that word right. So this is definitely a coaching program. Can you tell? Okay, so that's musical right. That's what I'm saying. A lot of them will be marked on musical right because of strong rhyme, meter, chant, and rhythm, correct? Let me see if this was my daughter's school calling me. No message. Okay, then we have visual spatial. That will be most of our students. Inter, I'll have to coach on all of that. That gets complicated. Verbal linguistic, visual spatial, chronic kinesthetic left, visual spatial. Logical mathematical, finally see logical mathematical. So let me talk about logical mathematical. So let me actually draw a picture of the brain. Logical, just talk about logical mathematical. Anyway. Okay. So what happens is due to genetics, due to environment, we're going to have a deficit in language about this area of the brain, starting young at an early age. So when that happens, the brain is going to cause other neural pathways to develop earlier on. And that's where we see our compensations happening. Again, you have a deficiency here. Some people can compensate, have early development in logical mathematical on the same side of the brain. Now, from my data, that's only 5% of the kids that we're working with actually get to have this compensation to be in the logical mathematical. Those lucky ducks, right? Those lucky ducks. Because most of the time when your brain's going to compensate, it's going to compensate on the right. That's where we see actually it's right here. Okay. This area gets overcompensated. That's where we see a lot of our imagination. That's where we see a lot of our outside the box. That's where you see all these other wonderful gifts that occur. So only about 5% are logical mathematical. So the ones that have compensated on the same side, that will be more of the Einsteins. Because the Einsteins, they're going to compensate on this side too, don't get me wrong, but they're going to compensate also in logical mathematical, and that hardly ever happens. And this is going to be the Steve Jobs. Okay, now the ones like me who didn't compensate on the same side with logical mathematical, dyscalculia also. Those are going to be more of Bronson. What's his name? Richard Branson. Okay, so there's gonna be more of the Richard Bransons on that side. So you'll hardly ever get to mark logical mathematical. Then we have verbal linguistic, visual language. So there's a ton of them because I want to make sure I have an equal sample of at least 10. And for some reason, I didn't even put anything on that one. Do you like to take things apart and put them together? That's visual spatial. So you'll mark that a lot. Do you like to take things apart and put them back together? And let me explain that. It's not due to analysis that they're able to want to take things apart and put them back together. It's nothing. That's why when you do puzzles with people with learning differences, you do it from the outside in. You have to fill out all the corners and put it in. It's us just trying to get to that complete whole. Our brain seeks to get to the back to the complete whole constantly. We have to be given tools of analysis to break down information. That's where the mind maps come in. That's where the bullet points of breaking things down and showing visually how to do that. Anyway, all those tools of breaking down. So it's our need to get back to the whole. Let me just tell you something real fast about that. This is my brother, okay? So he is got 160 IQ. He's a neurosurgeon, right? His ability for analysis and break down information is just unbelievable, right? So he's read every book there is under the sun, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, crazy. He's also got an MBA. Not only is he a neuro, anyway. So what I want to say about that is I kind of would rather have this deficit here and be compensated over here because of my ability to see the whole. That means more to me than being able to have analysis. He's going to spend his whole life breaking things down, possibly get to the whole, where I've always had the whole time. That's pretty cool. And if you ask me, I don't want to spend my whole life breaking something down, hoping to get to the whole, which you don't even know what whole you're going to get to yet until you get to it. I want to have the whole, you give me the tools to break down so I can explain it to everybody else. And then I can get back to my whole again. See what I'm saying? Just think about it. That's why our scientific reasoning, it looks totally different from everybody else. Has to have validation. We were already trusting in the whole that we've already had. Look at, why did this one not have one? Do you think, okay, so then it asks questions. Do you think goal setting is going to help you in school? I mean, if you don't have the motivation for goal setting, that changes the whole gift and strength and everything. Motivation's got to be there, drive. It's the #1 key factor to learning. You can't give somebody motivation. You can help them with their motivation by giving them autonomy and attunement, but you cannot offer that gift. They got to have that internally, unfortunately. But I've hardly had any kids that are unmotivated. If they are, then I get them motivated pretty quick by following their interest. Speaking of interest, this is what I'm saying. So in this, you can find out, I just put some common interest here. I thought I put anime and stuff like that in video games. Anyway, who knows? Anime. Is that how you spell anime? And stuff like, I want to put it for older teens, what they're interested in. But anyway, because it doesn't matter, because down here it says, tell me more about your interest. You can add whatever that's not covered here. It's very important to find their interest. And you know all the reasons why. I just said about motivation. Then you want to find out what are their desires, wants, dreams, and purposes. Because like Linda says, this should be the goal of every teacher. It's not, did I get every standard met that I was supposed to meet? Did I follow the scope and sequence? How's their academics? Your job would be to care for what's coming up for them in their future. That's where, and leading them there and trusting whatever that's going to be. So that's where that is open to write. Of course, are you wanting to hear the results from my Albert coach? The answer should be yes, because if you read this on your own without any coaching, you're just going to go, it's going to go into what everybody else has already always taught you about your multiple intelligences and what you've always learned about it. So I got a different take, being neurodifferent myself. So then you mark their top 3. I can tell you most top 3 our students are going to be visual, spatial, like I said. It's going to be body kinesthetic, and it's going to be musical. It's not going to be most of the time as logical, mathematical, verbal, linguistic. And I told you intra and inter gets pretty tricky and crazy. Before I leave this screening and go to coaching on any particular instance, you may have Laurel this week. I haven't gotten any texts from anybody this week, which is just kind of rare. But I think the holidays are making things crazy for everybody. Yeah, nothing. Let me explain neurodivergency versus learning different neurodifference. Okay. Let me put it under an umbrella real fast. Okay. So this is the neurodifference umbrella. And in our time and age, just about everybody alive has a neurodifference because of all the neurotoxins, the chemical induced environment we live in, the inability to release anger and shame. Believe it or not, my program goes all into anger and shame and how it affects your brain and your body and your soul, your spirit and your mind and all of that. But everybody has just about a neurodifference, right? There isn't a person you meet. So personally, when you're talking about my academics, which is the left side, we're talking about my problems with having the dyslexia. Instead of, and I could say LD, it's no biggie. Some people have a problem with that. I grew up with that label. My dyscalculia, I could put that all here. Dyscalculia and my dysgraphia, you can put that under here. Okay, I'm finally hearing from Nina. Could not get on. Okay. Dysgraphia. Okay. And I'm missing whatever label here. Oh, learning difference. Okay. So when you're talking about my academic side of my brain, we're talking about all these labels that society has decided to give to be able to help us, right? Now, when you're talking about my way of thinking and how my mind works and my strong will and my convergent thinking, no, divergent thinking. Why did I say the opposite? Anyway, we're talking about my neuro divergent thinking, my neurodivergency. Okay, so where does neurodiversity come in? So people say anybody that has ADHD, autism, dyslexia, all of that, that's neurodivergent. So I could put it here. What do I say neurodivergent for everybody who falls under this umbrella? No, because I don't know if they have a neurodivergency or not. So I say neurodifference here. I say neurodifference here. Now, for checking out your neurodivergency, if you're neurodivergent, that's going to be different from what you see over here. So I call all of this all together neurodifference. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Speaking about neurodivergence, being neurodivergent, I think with inductive reasoning and not deductive. So the majority of our society is deductive, and they follow this very similar type of scientific reasoning, scientific. Let me see what she said. Methods, right? Okay, she said 5 minutes. She's gonna get on. So that would be they have a theory, and then they develop a hypothesis. Well, this theory's basically this theory is basically based on other people's research. They're taking cumulatively what other people have already known about something. Then they're developing their therapy. Then they develop a hypothesis, and then they make their observations, and then they make their confirmations. Okay, so just like we were saying with my brother and his brain always trying to break down, break down, break down, what he's breaking down constantly is what everybody already knows about something to hopefully get to the whole in his understanding. I'd prefer not to be like everybody else in that way. I prefer the inductive reasoning. I like the fact that I base everything off of observation of things I've read from other people, observations of what's happening in my own life experience, and what I'm observing about others. To me, this is more cumulative to be more exact of how reality actually could be. Because something here that's into this normal type of reasoning is already taking something that's already known. This looks at what could possibly be else out there that we don't already know. You know what I mean? So it's more outside of the box. So then we take observations, and our brain looks at the why and tries to make patterns with it, with these observations. What's comparing, what's contrasting, what's blah blah blah, what's, so this is a different form of analysis. This one's based off our evaluative skills of looking at color, shape, size, dimension, rhyme, rhythm, meter, and pattern itself. So that's what makes it so outside of the box. Okay. And then we create our own hypothesis. Trust me, it's not going to be like this similar hypothesis that just comes from everybody else's research and everybody else's thinking. This whole and new different hypothesis. And then we develop our theory. And notice there's no confirmation needed. Can you think about why there's no confirmation needed? This is years of observation. This is years of experiencing yourself. This is years of hopefully somebody who's trusted in their divergent mind. So why would they have to confirm anything? They don't have to confirm. They will confirm because everybody will expect them to confirm, but they don't have to confirm because it's already been known to them. The whole's already been there and accessible. They're just having to break it down for everybody else is what's happening. Communicate it. So, Laurel, do you have any questions about what I just said? Please, let me know, because we're waiting on Nina to get on, and then we'll just start coaching, and she can watch the rest of this video she missed. Anything you want to say about your own mind, or any of your gifts and strengths? Interest? You don't have to.
No, I mean, my mind has a lot of things. Like, I'm just thinking through all this stuff that you're sharing, and just, I mean, where you're talking about your brother, I mean, taking apart things and putting them back together and figuring that stuff out for himself. It's, I mean, this is just fascinating to me, and it's fascinating because, I mean, this is stuff that I didn't learn in graduate school, and yet, I mean, through experience, I mean, both teaching and now tutoring, I mean, and just, I mean, my love of reading and learning, I mean, this is all stuff that is, I hate to use the phrase out there, and it's, I mean, I mean, these are all things that most people, and I mean, I hate saying most people because there's probably more people than I know that are, interested in this kind of stuff. And it is so needed, this understanding. I mean, understanding all of this, and then even jumping into the whole child. I mean, this is so needed in education, and even more broadly, I mean, in life.
You get it. I knew you would just get it, because before I have this screening available, I have the Welcome to Albert, and it's basically gonna send you to Nurture or Nature Part 1,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the why behind all of it. Everybody's wanting to figure out, what are we gonna do to help? What are we gonna do? We're gonna do this, we're gonna implement this, we're going to do this, but they're not getting down to the why, which is the preventative method of having it, especially with epigenetics, and the why being the most important factor. So my thing was, I say in my part 1, is I have seen so many kids be undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and on medication where there doesn't need to be, that I give that was just upsetting me to see so many upsetting parents, because remember, with my neurodivergency, I care immensely for people, animals, and nature, and I can empathetically really feel what they feel. So it's really hurting me. And I wanted to come up with a problem and a solution. So the problem is really out there. My theory and my hypothesis is really out there. A lot of people don't talk about these things or look at it, but this and the solution too. But I also say it's for everybody. It's anybody that's learning any life lesson with everybody has a neurodifference just about. So we're seeing children and adults digress with gulf-sized disconnect and low self-esteem. Each child and adult is multidimensional, and all of our system and senses need to function equalized, activated, and balanced for learning to take place. So I wasn't talking about just those with neurodifference. I mean, or ones that are the triune brain, which is the neomammalian complex, the RAS, aka neocortex, midbrain, pons, aka limbic system, and forebrain, thymus, aka reptilian, is working in a downward function, which makes learning chaotic in the mind. People are using their mental and emotional bodies to learn, not their etheric body, their etheric. Solution. When using the etherical body, all of our faculties, systems, and senses will function equalized, activated, and balanced. The triune brain needs to be working in an upward function, no longer performing a protective function. That's trusting themselves, if that's the opposite. With an functional upward system, the child and or adult can trust themselves with their gifts, learning uniquenesses through spiritual mindset with self-directed neuroplasticity using ABCs, and gain God awareness, eventually unity through Priyam daily. They're offered a freedom arising from conditions within the brain, senses, or sense organs not directly caused by the external stimuli, but the knowing within themselves, in which is patience for understanding and trusting their subjective divergent mind. Yeah, so basically trusting in your mind and learning from what your mind is telling you. So you've got to be calm. You got to be at peace. When you're at peace, then you can actually hear and learn from what God is telling you and what you need, direction you need to go to follow what your path, if you know what I mean. So then you're trusting in what that is, then you can go form your hypothesis and your theory and your whatever, just like I had. But I had to put this out there in the public, and it's so alternative and holistic, and I just really had listened to God throughout the whole programming and seeing where do I need to go and what do I need to do. But I want you, yeah, when you're finished with that ELSL class, take a look at it, because it's very time consuming.
Well, and that's where I mean, I have begun reading, the nature. This first section, and I mean, there's so much. I mean, it's an incredible manuscript. I mean, just a little bit that I've read, and I mean, my brain wants to understand all of it, and and I've got to take it, break it down and stuff. But I mean, I think what you said just a minute ago, what I heard you say was everyone has a neurodifference, and yet, I think when we hear that word, because it's such a charged word right now, neurodifference, and and I think it's because partly because of how sadly, how we are. I'm coming from a Christian, mindset, so I mean, the idea of shame and sin, I mean, just runs rampant. But there's a stigma, when we hear a neurodifference. And yet, I fully believe that. I mean, we were coming from a Christian mindset. We were all created in the image of God, and that's where I'm coming from. And yet, I mean, Trisha, we can look throughout creation, and I mean, even an identical twin, like there's no two of us that are alike, and I mean, there's so much I truly believe God has so much creativity, and these neurodifferences, they're not to our shame. It's a matter of just figuring out what our neurodifference is, and then I mean, looking also at the work that you're doing and seeing that these are our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So work to our strengths. Don't whatever. I mean, if you're visual, spatial, whatever the visual left, whatever your strength is, figure that out and then work to that strength.
Exactly.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's not the stigma that society has put on us. I think I mentioned to you a few days ago. I'm high functioning autistic and have Asperger's, and for so long in my life, and I still struggle with it being a stigma. And I mean, there's few people that I tell, and now it's out here, and it's now out here for the world to hear, or whatever. The listeners, and yet I'm learning that the way that my mind works, that's the best thing for me, because it's not, I mean, it even though at times it feels like it's a disability to me because my brain moves too fast in certain things. As a friend of mine told me yesterday, she said, Laurel, you've got skill sets that this world needs. And the way that your brain works and remembers things, she was like, I wish that my brain worked that way. And that's where, going back to your comment that I heard, everyone has a neurodifference. Like, instead of the shame that we put on people, we need to embrace that and say, oh, well, this is how you are. Okay, well, let's work to that. And we need to champion people instead of going, oh man, like, well, you've got this, you've got that, and looking down on them. Because we look down on people far more than I think we should.
Yep. As I said, this is the academic side. This is where you have your language and your math, and that's where all education, let's move their language and their math. This is more of the gifts of this side are, what did I say? Body kinesthetic, right? That's large, gross motor. Movement and music are absolutely how somebody can express what they've learned of interest. This is more of visual spatial, so that's creating things using that strong imagination. Okay, this remind me to go over the difference between imagination and creativity, by the way. So that's where you can use your imagination, and they can imagine up and be able to express it in a creative way. And they can do that with the information, the content they're trying to learn. And then next is, what did I say? Musical linguistic, but that's the right side of it, where that's rhyme, meter, chant. And so they could do it through so many ways to be able to express what they learn through that. So take those strengths, and sure, you can integrate some of your academics, some of your language and math as they're trying to, they've already researched all that they want to know about whatever interest here, and it's to kind of help communicate, but it's not the emphasis. It's just to kind of help communicate, but they're going to find ways to communicate their learning best through these ways. They can take some of those and kind of help it a little bit, but that's where a little bit of intervention and intervening can come in. But let them go with what they know and using these gifts. You got it.
So what would be on
difference between So left, this,
Mm-hmm.
logical, mathematical, and verbal linguistic. Only 5% of the students I find are deficit in one of these two areas uh, when I meet with them. So it's usually both. Okay, yeah, that they're deficit. Those students I meet are mostly deficit. And let me tell you the difference. I was just so confused why people want to say creativity because our if you have a neurodivergency along with it, you're gonna have a strong imagination because you have 3D thinking. Okay, so you think in your mind things that are as if they're 3D, right? So you can live in the past. You can ruminate and be in the past and be in past conversations. How somebody's face look when they were speaking to you? How was their voice sounding? But you can live it as if it's today, okay? And then you can go into the future. Oh, what am I going to create and innovate? There's that word create. What am I going to create and innovate? And you can imagine seeing it. Like literally, it's just the coolest thing in a way. I wasn't even hardly thinking about my program. And in my mind, I saw me moving one section of my program to a higher part of my program. Like I wasn't even thinking about it, but I saw that in my mind. I saw it moving up. But anyway, it's crazy. So you can create in the future, right? What it's going to be. So the problem is staying in the present when you're spending too much time in the past and in the future. So that's where you get tools of staying present and staying calm. And that's your goal, right? Because you can spend time in the past and in the future, but you're not going to let it take over all your day. Okay, so I've set time where I allow myself to daydream. I don't know, it's weird, but it's true. And the rest of the time I'm staying in the present and or trying to at least. So this is my neurodivergency, right? Okay. So why are they saying at all that we're creative when we're imaginative and we can create? Creative people, people that are creative, they're in the present, first of all, and they're given materials. You're looking at a group of materials to set aside, and you're taking those materials, that stimuli, and then you create something out of those materials. It was never imagined before it even came to fruition. It's just creating from what you got in front of you. And then you can possibly, if you can, use your imagination, go, look, I created a boat. And then you've used your imagination with that creativity. So that would take the analysis and building from something that's taken apart and putting it to the whole. We're not like that. We work on the whole, given to the parts and then to the whole. See what I'm saying? So I don't like it when people say we're creative because we can be. Yeah, give me these materials. I enjoy the feel of them. I'm gonna work with them, and then what I can use my imagination and see what I create. But that's not how it works. We're imaginative. We get too imaginative, that could get us in trouble. So that's where I said I've gotten tools of being able to stay in the present because it's exciting to think what can I make and innovate an entrepreneur for the future. It's fun stuff. Does that make sense, Laurel?
So
So,
then, and
uh-huh.
just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, the creative is on the left side of the brain and the imaginative is on the right side. Is that
Yep.
is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, I guess that's it because I do have a class in 4 minutes. So you give this screening to the parents or you do it with them and the child before you begin to tutor. Or for Linda's instance, it's not for her tutoring, it's for her class who she's doing this case study for. She's done it on 4 of her lowest students that she's given to know exact gift strengths and interest for. Okay, well, I'm gonna go, and so I don't see you later today. No, I'll see you Sunday. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Have a good rest of your weekend.
All right.
Bye.
I will. Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.